Welcome back to the Application Lifecycle Design course. In this lesson, we're going to walk through a more advanced development flow. So this is probably going to be something that you're going to use when you have two or more developers. Just because a lot of stuff, it adds a little bit of an extra layer of work, but the result is it helps you stay on the same page and it helps keep the whole process moving smoothly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about these boards. So let's go here. Now we have work items, we have boards, we have backlogs, we have sprints, and we have queries. Now there's a whole course or a couple of courses in here that we could do probably on this section alone. And how do you do the agile process or the scrum process or CMMI? We're not going to get into that because the reality is all three of those processes specifically, but the process type in general, it's just about how do you organize what you're doing. So we're not going to worry about organizing right now. We're not going to worry about which way you organize or if you do, boards and backlogs, how you do sprints, how you, group them into sections. All we're going to worry about is feature requests and bugs, because those are really the foundational work items that everything boils down to. You're either adding something new to the product or you're fixing something in the product. So on the work items page, the work item here is a drop down. There's bug and there's feature. And those are the two we're going to use. So let's start off with a bug. Now, one bug we already know about, I just clicked on it, is that the README on that overview page, the README has an issue where it's displaying the URL for the image of the build status, not the actual image of the build status. So the bug title could be something, again, you can have formal titles for these. We're going to go with the idea that we're just trying to put bugs in the system. We're not worried about all this extra stuff we could add, because at the end of the day, we need to be coding. So let's enter a quick bug here and say, bug fix 5. So we'll create that branch. And now we're on the bug fix 5. We can tell that because of the fact that the bug fix 5 is the one that's bold. So now we can start making our changes. So let's go over to our library and our tests. And the first thing I want to do, since I am trying to be a good developer and use my unit tests their full capabilities, I'm going to take the information from the bug, if there was one, and I'm going to try to break the system, essentially. That's not wanted. Control C, Control V, there we go. So the issue is, if we divide by 0, we should expect 0. That's going to be what we expect back. Now, in the reality is it could be an exception, it could be something else, but we're going to say, no, we want to see a 0 come back. That's our resulting value we want to see. So this test should fail. Let's go ahead and save that and go to our Task Explorer and run all as soon as it comes up, and make sure we have a failing test. And that's part of unit testing, is making sure you have a failing test first, because the fact that if you don't, let's run selected tests. If you don't have a failing test, then you don't know that your solution actually fixed anything because your test said it passed. So there you go. It says that it expected 0 but got back infinity instead. So now we have a failing test. Let's go fix it. Go to calculator and say, well, that's not going to work. We have a failing test here. So we can say instead is if y equals 0, we can even comment that if you wanted to, but instead we'll return 0. So now we have two return statements in here. One is going to do the calculation, and one is going to return 0. Not a huge fan of that. Let's do this instead. It's double output equals 0. And then if y is not equal to 0, we're going to do the output equals x divided by y. Either way, we're going to return output. And I missed a semicolon. So there's one return statement now. We're starting with a output variable 0. If y is not 0, then do the division. Otherwise, we're not doing anything, which means the output is 0. So let's save that. And now let's run this again. Oops, there we go. And now we have a passing test. So we did the work, and now we go to our changes. We should see two changes to stage, fixed. Before I do this, one thing I want to do is we don't have a way to associate that bug here. And I want to associate that bug. Now there is a command or a syntax you can use in your commit, but I don't like that method. So instead what we need to do is we need to wire up our team services. So let's go to Home, and we'll go to Settings, I believe. Nope. Oh, it's this drop down right here. Drop down and then Project and Manage Connections. There we go. So now what we need to do is we need to create a connection. So connect to a project. I'll use my Tim Corey account. And I am Tim Corey. And there we go. Now that I've connected to that project, I get a lot more options here. Notice pull request and branches and sync and work items and tags and all the rest. So now I can even check my build status right from here. But what I'm going to do is go back to my changes, and now I have related work items. And it says drag work items here. Well, where are they coming from? Let me click this queries link over here. One of the options is going to be no personal or favorite queries. Excellent. So we're going to add some. Let's go back over to our work items, go to queries. And I need a new query. So let's create a query that is work item type equals any. Yeah, that's fine. If we're a small environment, you could create a larger query or a more complex query, but any work item, which gets all three, that's good enough for me. So I am going to save this. So I'll hit Save Query. And I'll call this Tim's Query. So now we have a query in my list. So Tim's Query. So now when we work on our work items, it should be that we have a list of queries. Now it's going to take a minute to synchronize. Let's see if I use the synchronize button here. It's not finding our queries yet. All right, so I restarted Visual Studio, and now I see all three actually assigned to me, follow work items and Tim's query. So any of them will do. Actually, you don't need to create a query if you don't want to, but we did. So let's do that. And now you see over here on the left, the query results, I have the bug, and the feature. And in this case, it's the divide by zero error in calculator that I'm interested in. So I'm going to drag that over to the changes that are currently staged. So now I'm saying these changes relate to this bug. So now I give a commit message. Fix divide by zero error. So fix create code to return 0 instead of infinity. And wrote test to verify. Sounds about right. I'm going to commit staged. And now I'm going to sync, which that's not going to work because I've got no way to send this because it's bug fix 5 branch. Okay, so I go back to branches instead. And what do I do first? Well, I'm going to merge from branch. I'm actually going to do origin master here. This is going to save me a step, but essentially bring in any changes that are missing from master into my bug fix branch first. So merge these all the way up to date. And now what I can do is I can go to my master branch. So I just double clicked on it and now I'm checked out on master. And now I can merge my changes in from bug fix 5. Now I could do a rebase, but that's a lot more complicated, and I don't think you're going to need it for this level of development. That's kind of advanced Git stuff in my mind, but it's up to you if you want to do that or not. So I'll pull from bug fix 5 into master. I'm going to merge, and now it's updated to commit, and there's the commit ID. So we can go to sync now, and now we have that one to push out on master. So we'll push, since we already did a pull. And now I've successfully pushed that up. And we can come over here to our bug, double click on it. And it opens it right up. And we can look at the development. Let's zoom in it down here. Now under development, it says this work was done on it. So there's the commit ID. There's who did it. And there's the message. You can click on it and go right to that commit. So you know what work was done on it. There's also a link tab over here that will link to other items, including other commit messages. Now, if this is a big issue, maybe you have multiple commits here. And that's fine. So now I can come to the state here, and I can set this to closed. Actually, let's set it to resolved. All right. And we hit save. Now, obviously, in a normal environment, I'd probably wait to see that that actually worked. But in this case, I know it worked. And I'm not going to go through the process of just looking at the website because there's no actual use for that calculator. There's no method using it right now. But now that's in place. Our bug is resolved. And if we go to our pipeline, we'll see that our build is running. So that's how you do a bug fix process. It's a couple extra steps, but at the same time, now you have this list of bugs you can work off of and also features. And since you can assign them, you can leave them unassigned until you assign it to a specific person, and then that person knows these are the things I'm working on. Now when you grow to the next level where you're a little larger and it's not quite as easy to manage what's most important, then you can work on things like sprints, where you say, okay, these things are going to get worked on in this grouping, and we're going to get all this done and push it out to production. Once that's done, we get to the next one. And so you start having those burn down charts and all the rest, and that's where things get even more useful for that larger environment. But for a smaller environment, you probably don't need that yet. Okay, so now what we're going to do is something a little tricky. We're going to try and simulate the idea of having two people working on the same thing at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Visual Studio again. And this time I am going to go back to my branches. I'm going to create, well, first of all, let's right click on bug fix and say delete since we don't need that anymore. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this new feature. I'm tired of working on bugs. Now we're going to work on a feature that added deployment status indicator on the README file. So each deployment status has a badge you can add, just like the badges for the builds. So we're going to add that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new branch. Let's call it feature 6, since this is ID number 6. And it's a feature. We're going to check out from master. So we're going to bring master stuff into feature 6. So now we're on the feature 6 branch. Now, the actual work for this we have to do on the file itself since it's not actually in our Visual Studio. So there's readme.md. We'll edit that with Notepad. And what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to add a couple extra lines here. I'm going to say deployment status. And now what I'm going to do is we're going to have the development environment. There we go. That's spelled right. And we'll have that actually the image right afterwards. And then we'll have one more for staging environment and one more for production environment. And somehow I got a space in there. Okay, so let's create the links for these three. So let's go over to here and go to our pipeline release. And we're going to grab the development environment first. We'll hit edit. And under options, I believe it is, integrations. Yep, there it is. Enable the development or deployment status badge. So this is for development. We just copy this. Again, it's just that URL, but not a problem. We know how to fix that now. So come back over here. Whoops. Come back over to our Notepad++. And here, instead of just pasting the URL, instead we need to say exclamation point, square brackets. And then we need a open paren, paste our URL, and we're going to say deployment environment in quotes, and then end our parens. And then square brackets, we're going to say deployment environment build status. So this is the alt text. It's in square brackets. Staging. Under options, integrations, grab this, copy this, and then hit save. Go back over to our Notepad++, replace this URL right here with a new one, which I'm guessing there's a pattern here, so it's probably 3/3, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to guess on that to be, I'm going to base my changes on that. So options, integrations, production, copy it, save it, go back over to Notepad, and this is the URL we need to replace. So we're going to delete that and paste it in, and it is 3/3. Well, you know. So now I'm almost done this, and I look up and go, you know what? I don't think we should say branch. I think we should say build here. And we're going to do the colon just like we did with our staging environment. And we're going to do build one more time. So I think that's the way we're going to do it. And you start looking around and go, oh, you know what? Let's see if there's anything else we need to tweak here. And let's just say that I got a little ambitious and said, I'm going to fix this top one. Now, I'm not going to fix the other two. Let's say I'm going to fix the top one. And I will say development environment, which that's what this is down here too. Not deployment environment. There we go. So development environment, and close the parens, and go to the beginning here and put this in parens. And I'll have the exclamation point in the square brackets and say development environment build status. So I fixed this one. I probably shouldn't have, but I did. And so it's going to kind of step on some toes in a minute. I'm going to hit save here. And before I do anything else, I'm going to pretend like somebody else came on to the server and said, oh, you know what? There's a bug in the README. Now, this is on a server. So this could be somebody else, or it could be just me on a laptop. But I'm going to say, you know what? I know that these are wrong. So let's go ahead and fix this. So I'm going to say exclamation point square bracket. Oops. I need to hit edit first. Exclamation point square brackets open paren. commit. And I say fix readme image bug. I'm going to associate it with the bug image links display on readme instead of images. Okay, so if I'm doing the right thing, I'm going to apply it to master, but that's okay. I'm going to hit commit. So now, the work that I did, let's open up our notepad over here. The work I did over here, it's going to kind of conflict with the work that my buddy did on the server. So what are we going to do? Well, we don't know that yet. So let's plug away and go to Team Explorer, go to Changes. We're going to stage that one change, and we're going to associate it with the feature add deployment status. There we go. And say add deployment status images. Adds the images to the README for each deployment stage. Okay, so now you've done the right thing. We're going to commit it. And now we come over here to branches. And we need to merge. So we're going to merge from. And let's grab origin master. Okay, so we're going to merge from master, but from origin. And we hit merge. And it says already up to date. Cool. And actually, I don't think that's right. So let's go to master. Let's double click on it. And now on master, we're going to go to sync. And we're going to do a pull. Let's see if we get anything new. It was updated to commit, and there's the commit ID. I should have done a fetch first to show you, but I just pulled that change. So now let's go to branches, double click on feature 6, and we're going to merge from master. And we'll hit merge. And we have a problem. So what's our problem? A merge operation is in progress, but we have to resolve the conflicts and commit the results. So we've got a problem. The README was changed in both places, and the system doesn't know how to merge those two changes together in a way that saves both changes, if that's a good idea, or brings one versus the other. It's a decision that a human has to make. It can't be something that the system guesses at. So let's click on conflict 1, and notice it says README. So double click on README, and that opens up this where we have to choose what we're going to do. Do you want to take the one from master? Do you want to take the one from feature 6? Or do you want to do a diff? Let's do a diff. So this diff right here, what shows us is the differences between the two branches. So this one, the difference is that we added those tags to make them images, whereas this one over here, the difference is, well, we add one image tag, we change it to build instead of branch, and we add the deployment status. So let's compare files. So this is the changes between the two files, the two resulting files. So each diff shows it against the repository before these changes were made, and then the compare shows the two against each other. But now what we're going to do is click merge. And what this does, it allows us to figure out how we're going to deal with these conflicts. Now this view looks a little bit intimidating at first, but what it's showing us is 3 different views. One is the source, and the source is from master. So that's the one that I modified on the server. The second is the target, which is on the feature 6 branch. That's where we fixed the, or add the feature actually. And the final one is the result view, which is, this is what we're going to take or accept when we are finally done. So we can either select this one and hit the checkbox, or this one, or we can even modify it directly in here and have a third option and kind of merge them both of them together. Space, and I'll paste it in. Let's come over here, and we're going to copy this line right here. And I select this line right here, and I'm going to backspace and paste it in. So now what I've got is kind of a mishmash of the two, where I've got changes from the target mostly, but then I also brought in changes from the source. And this is the result that I want. So now what I can do, notice it says 1 conflict, 0 remaining, meaning we've resolved the conflict. Now I can accept the merge. So now there's no more conflict, so I can select commit merge. And now I have a new commit. And this new commit is that joining of the two that I created. So it's already staged. I can just say merge commit if I wanted to, but I'm going to say merge two variations of README. So two changes were made independently on the README file. This merge fixes or joins them together. Sounds good. And commit stage. So now let's look at which branch I'm on. I'm on the feature 6 branch. So let's go over, we just merged master already. So now we go to master and we say merge from feature 6, merge, and just fast forward it. So we're good to go there. And now what we can do is we can go over to sync. We have the two commits. We have the merge, and we have the fix that we did, the feature we added. And so now you can do a fetch first, which it shouldn't be anything. And now you hit a push. And once that's done, now we've completed that assignment. We had two people working on the same file. They both did commits independently. So the file changed to a new version on both ends. And then we merged those two changes together to create a final commit that is the merge of the two. This will happen in Git quite a bit as your team grows and as you work on something to be scared of instead of something to be embraced. Because this is how Git works. We don't just lock files down so you can't edit this. We have to have this process where anybody can make changes to it and it's okay. And we can just merge those in. Typically what happens is in that README, we bring in my changes and then we bring in somebody else's change and just say, select, allow both changes because it'd be on different lines for different areas. I just showed you a more difficult one where the same line had been changed two different ways. That way because I want to show you that, you can still overcome that. Okay, now let's go back to the web and we should have a couple things happening. First of all, we should have a build running. Oh, it's actually already done. Merge two variations of README. And so then the release in development is actually running right now. Let's go overview page and check that out. We now have the deployment status down here, and we have the build status up here for all of our pipelines. Now let's go to our boards and look at our work items. And we can see that this one is resolved, which we knew that, and we can actually close if we wanted to, since we know that's resolved. So let's close that, and it's been verified. And now we can go back to work items and say it's gone now. And we can say, well, we actually closed this one as well because we saw that actually worked. If we hit save on that one, notice that there is a link to development work on it. There's actually right over here. Let's zoom in. There is the build. I'm sorry. There's the commit, and then right there is the build of that commit. So it's actually two different linked items on this one bug, and we know which particular it's tagged, so we know which particular build that's in. So this becomes really, really helpful in telling us more information about our work items. So now let's go ahead and close this one as well. So now all three work items are closed and our board is empty. That's great, I guess. And back at the overview page, we can see a few extra things. Work items completed, 3. Work items created, 3. We haven't done a pull request, but we have made 16 commits by one author. And probably by this time, we also have our release pipeline. That should be about done. And yes, it is. So now we have our release for the development pipeline at release 7, but staging is only at 2. We haven't moved that ahead based upon these latest commits. And that's probably pretty common. So you do a lot of work in development and keep, fixing bugs and those kind of things. But then once you're done, then you'll start pushing to the other branches. So the final thing we need to do is go back to Visual Studio. This is something I often forget if you're not careful. Go back to your branches, make sure you're on master, right click on feature 6 and say delete. So we're getting rid of that branch we don't need anymore. Now, since we think that we're ready to go on to the next step, which is going to be staging, what we could do is we can go to our staging branch, double click it, and then say merge from master, and say merge. And now we can go to our sync. Notice all the changes that we just made that are now going to be pushed up to staging. We can do a fetch first to make sure there's nothing on staging. There should not be. And now we hit push. And that kicks off the staging process. And so now the staging will build, which as long as it built in development, it should build in staging. But it's one more check. And then once it builds in staging and deploys, and we test it, then we do the next step in the process. I'm going to do that now for sake of time. If we know the process works, and I want to show exactly how this process would go for release. So go back to branches. We'd go to release, double click on that, and then we say merge. And remember, we merge from staging. So from staging into release, we click merge. Then we go to our sync. There's all those changes. We fetch from the remote release just in case. And since there is none, we can go ahead and hit push. And now I've kicked off the build process for release as well. So now, once this completes the build and release process, the release or production website will be updated with our latest changes, which includes some of those changes in the wording that we pushed a couple of lessons ago, but only to development. And now that's going to be pushed into staging and then production. So that's it for what basically is 3 different workflows that are it's the same workflow with added steps, depending on how complex you want to get. The simplest is that we work on master. And then you commit the changes and you push them, and that's it. Then the next step, which we call the simple workflow, is that we create a branch off of master. We do the work, we commit it back to master, we push that. And that just protects master in case we need to do another branch off of master while we're working on this first branch. So, and then the what we call the advanced flow is where we're creating those bug reports and we're creating the feature requests. And we have multiple users working on the system at once. And we're doing things like merging those changes together and making sure we create a branch for every bug or every feature we're working on and bring those back together and then push them up to the server. There are still levels beyond this you can go. For example, one thing that we have not done, because it really does require a larger team to be useful, is we can create what are called pull requests. So a pull request, just to cover it broadly, is when you create that feature branch or that bug fix branch, instead of merging it back into master, what you do is you push it to the server and create what's called a pull request. And a pull request essentially says, this branch I have here called bug fix 5, I want to bring that into master. But maybe I don't have permission to bring to merge into master. And so someone on the server would review that pull request and look at the code changes that you've made, maybe even test it out, and then they would commit or merge that pull request into master. So it's essentially putting someone in between you and the merge to master. That's what a pull request is. So it says, here's my feature branch, here's what I'm working on, can you please approve this to go into master? And that the rest of the process afterwards is the same. So this really does require a team that's a little bit larger because you don't necessarily need that for a very, very small team. It's only if you have 3, 4, 5 members and maybe want to keep a little bit of security around what gets pushed to a branch. Like I pointed out earlier, there's also the idea of having these boards and especially walking through things like user stories. So user stories can be great, and I will cover them in a future series, but essentially a user story is when you kind of talk through what a user would do, one thing they'd do with your software. So you say a user would log in and check their profile. That might be a user story. And then what you do is you add features and issues and bugs and tasks around that story. And then you can bring that and put it on a board. You can put it in your backlog. You can bring that user story into a sprint. There's a lot of different things you can do with those stories and with those other items. But again, that really requires a larger team to make it worth the effort of managing all these things. But at the end of the day, this whole process revolves around your code and then what you do with that code. And that's what I want you to concentrate on, is automating those processes. Because, and here's where a lot of organizations get stuck, is they don't automate the process, and then every deploy becomes painful, and you're not quite sure if it's going to work or not. One of the things that's pretty common is people don't want to deploy on a Friday afternoon. Now, that's wise advice from a standpoint of, even if you test everything, there might still be a bug, and you don't want to ruin your weekend. But part of the reason why people don't want to deploy on a Friday afternoon is because what if the build fails? Or what if we forgot a file when we went to production, and so it crashes the server? Or what if? And with the automation of pipelines, you eliminate a lot of those what ifs. And with the automation of unit tests and making sure you've checked your code, that eliminates more. And the idea of having multiple release pipelines that are similar, so that, or the same in this case, which hopefully they're the same. If they're the same, then you've done this process over and over and over again, so you know it works. And you can be confident, and it's one less thing to worry about. So now you're not just now you're worrying just about the code changes you've made and making sure that you've tested them thoroughly and making sure you have unit tests against them. You're not worried about that. Plus, did the build work? Did I remember all the files? Did I properly deploy it? And when do I deploy it? And do I have to be up for that? Nope. All that's taken care of for you. Speaking of deployment, this is pending approval. Let's go ahead and approve it. There we go. So now that should be queued up to actually get deployed. So this automation, really important. This is something a lot of companies don't do or don't do well. And because of that, there's lots of lost hours and there's a lot more stress. So learn how to do it and then implement it either for yourself or for your company. For me personally, every project that I do that's going to go into production in any way goes through this process. I create the repository. I create the system for the pipelines for building it and for deploying it, because I don't want to have to worry about it. I just want to commit my code and walk away. And it goes right up into my development environment. I can give that to a customer. I can look at it myself, make sure it's right, and I can push a button and it goes into production or goes to a staging or whatever. So even if the process is simplified and small, I still have this automation in place in order to save me time and effort. And I encourage you to do the same. So I hope you've enjoyed this code course. And at the same time, I hope you got a lot out of it and you've really taken to heart the ways that you can make your life easier and better through automation and the automation lifecycle. Thanks for watching, and please let me know how you made out in your own application lifecycle development.